Okay, now we have consultants in next in line after construction. The reason I had construction before was because consultants usually are a percentage of the total construction cost. They may not say that to you, but you will find that if you're building a bigger development, even if you've got 10 townhouses, and let's say that you're building cheap 10 townhouses and then you are building some high-end 10 townhouses, which are going to cost more. Your consultant is always going to charge more for the luxurious product. So that is why I had consultants offer the construction costs, because when we are doing feasibility and I want to figure out some numbers quickly, we go by a percentage as a percentage amount to the total construction cost. Stat fees are always done based on the percentage of the land, and your marketing, closing, and your miscellaneous costs are all done as a percentage of the total sale value. So GRV stand for gross realization value. So let's just go into consultants and see what we've got here. So under consultants, we have, again, you can allow a value per unit. So when you go and get a fee proposal for them, whatever fee proposal you get, divide that by the number of units, put that value in here. Or you can, if you don't have a fee proposal as yet, you can go with a percentage method. So in this scenario, let's just leave that as $5,000 per unit, and I'll leave this as 0, because the moment I start putting in, let's say 5% over here, it's gonna give me an error again, telling me that I can't have two things in place. So let's just leave that as 0 and go with that. Then professional reports that you might need to get. So I've allowed about 3% in there in this scenario, let's say. So I've allowed about $88,000 for the whole project. That will give me the planning drawings as well as the construction ready drawings or the working drawings that are broken down in details and so on. So that's our consultants. So let's look at the next section, which is statutory fees and contributions. We understand what council contributions are. They are basically, the idea here is that if you have a block of land which only had a single house on it, and suddenly you're going to put an apartment building on the same place, you're going to put a load on the councils or your local government authority or your municipality, their existing infrastructure. So your sewer and your stormwater, whatever capacity that they have, you're gonna, instead of having one house dispose of their stormwater and sewer by hooking up to the council's sewer and stormwater line or legal point of discharge, now you have maybe 10 in that apartment building that will be disposing of the waste, the stormwater and all of that into the council's existing infrastructure, and that's like an infrastructure levy. So there are two. There might be a different name that you might call that or refer to as, but it's there. Now this yes and no is basically whether or not. Usually, council contributions here in Australia don't have any GST on them, and that is why there are two options here whether or not to calculate GST. But since we're doing this feasibility without the GST calculation for the time being, we are going to leave that as it is. It will have no impact here whatsoever. So I'll show you in a second, but see here, if I was to select, for example, if I go GST right here and I put 10% GST over here and I come back in this section, suddenly it'll tell me that I've told them that this council contribution include GST in the amount that I have allowed for. So if it doesn't, I just have to select no, and this calculation will go back to 0. But if I select yes, it will do the calculation for me. But we'll come back to GST after completing this feasibility without GST first. So we've got $1 per unit and a percentage of the land right here. So we've got those details. Again, you can allow a per unit value or a percentage. Next one is your marketing and selling costs and so on. So you've got agents commission on residential, and then you've got agents commission on commercial. because they might have two different rates. So if you put in a value here as 1% and 2%, or if you know the per unit value as an average for your agent's commission for residential and commercial, you can use that over here. These are marketing expenses. These are apart from what will be paid to the agent. There could be listing costs, there could be holding, there could be brochures, there could be all sorts of, you might want to put together a website to market your project. So these are those costs, the other selling costs and the marketing expenses. So you can break it down into these two and say, look, I'm going to allow another $5,000 per unit. Because I'll be doing advertising on Facebook, for example, or I'll be doing a mail dropout to all the houses in this area and so on. So you can break these things down in two different things, two different categories, and you can again use that as a percentage, or you can use it as a fixed number. So we'll leave that as a fixed number for the time being, and go on to the project closing and other leasing expenses. So we've got legals on settlement. Again, I know that when my lawyer or my solicitor, or in Australia it's known as a conveyancer, is going to help me settle on the unit that I have developed, that means people who I have sold it to, they will be settling on it. So that's when they are buying this for me. It'll cost me $975 per unit. So I'll allow that. There could be leasing expenses that, you might be leasing it out, or you might be for the commercial section. If you know what those leasing expenses are going to be, you can put that in there. And if you've got any miscellaneous closing costs, you can make an allowance for them right here. Under miscellaneous costs, we have miscellaneous allowance. I've allowed $750, let's just make that $1,100 per unit. That way, I've allowed an extra bit of costs in there, and that's pretty much it. So once we've got all our development costs are sorted here, we'll have our cost of sales, and we'll have a gross profit at this stage per unit. So I'll catch you in the next section.